still good morning, so good morning. And thank you, Christian, for the introduction. And thank you for attending. My presentation is focused on how we can harmonize cost and microliter dosing performance requirements in applications listed here. Just a little overview on the presentation. A little bit about Congruence Medical Solutions. We are almost 5 years old. We're based in Baltimore, close to Washington, D.C., the United States. And our focus is on applications that involve microliter dosing. So just to speak a little bit about what are these applications, and there are a number of current but also emerging applications. The current applications that involve microliter dosing are in ophthalmology and dermatology. But there's a number of emerging applications that are driven a lot by cell and gene therapies, that potent immunotherapeutics, oncolytic viruses, targeted organ delivery, etc., that would add to the field of microliter dosing. And I would like to speak today on how the performance of how these microliter volumes are injected have an implication of cost, not just in development, but also when you commercialize. So just a little bit of background, what is traditionally used? What is used today to inject these microliter volumes? So there's a pre-filled option and a non-pre-filled option. A non-pre-filled option is a conventional 1 ml hypodermic syringe. Becton Dickinson, Terumo, and the like, right? And a pre-filled solution is you take a standard pre-fill, which would be a 1 ml long or a half ml pre-filled syringe with an external dose mark printed on the surface of the barrel. And the user in each of these cases is expected to align the stopper with the dose mark, right? There's a challenge here, and the little table there is illustrating that. So for every millimeter, right, of travel within the barrel, in a half ml pre-filled syringe, you get about 17 microliters. And in a 1 ml long, it's about 32 microliters. So as you can see, there's opportunity for a lot to go wrong there from an accuracy perspective, because you're challenging the limitation of the user to align within a very narrow range, right? Also, the registration or printing of that dose mark, if you're off by a little bit, you could be off a lot. So all these factors would confound potentially or challenges that someone would face, right, from a performance perspective purely. Okay, so let's look at this performance, right? So I have a couple of case studies here that I'd like to go over. So one in the non-pre-filled. So the first, is there a laser pointer here? I guess it doesn't show up on the screen. Yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe not. So anyways, if you look at the first case study is the inflammation cases. This is with Eylea. It happened in January of 2018. There was a spike, and you can see the spike in the number of sterile inflammation post-injection. These are really painful, and this was for the non-pre-filled, so this was injecting with a hypodermic syringe. They just couldn't explain what happened, right? So Regeneron did an investigation, and they said nothing changed in their production. So they asked the syringe manufacturer to see maybe it's a syringe, because there were certain lots of syringes that were associated with this inflammation cases. The syringe manufacturer said, our production didn't change, our material didn't change. Well, who's to blame? No one knows, but there's a problem there, right? Another case study that I would like to show is the silicone oil droplets. So these are injections in the eye. Typically, you don't think about leachable silicone in skin injections. You can see it, right? But in the eye, they cause floaters. In fact, in the United States, there's active lawsuits about silicone droplets in the eye. And this is because it may be a potential safety hazard. But these are all kind of unintended consequences, right? These are systems that were for skin injections, but for eye injections, there are new challenges that present themselves. Another case study, well, from a performance standpoint, is the accuracy of the system, right? I mentioned in my previous slide about the challenge of delivering an accurate, precise dose. Now, this is a 0.5 ml pre-filled syringe, so it's the best possible case, right? And you can see the doses range from 40 microliters to 73 microliters for an indicated 50 microliter dose, which is a problem, especially if you're doing dose ranging studies and clinical studies. So if your target dose is going to be off by 50%, how can you interpret the data that you're looking at, right? Okay, so I want to kind of establish some requirements that I think would be helpful from a microliter dosing perspective, right? So first requirement, very obvious, would be ensuring patient safety and regulatory compliance, right? So advances in prefillable syringes has mitigated a lot of the safety problems from potential leachable silicone and other undesirable leachables. Also, very recently, there was in the news was a clinical hold by the US FDA for a clinical study by Regenx Bio as a gene therapy for injection in the eye. And the only reason they were given was that dosing system had a problem. We don't know exactly what the problem is, but this exemplifies increased scrutiny by a regulatory agency about the dosing system. So we need to understand that better. The other requirement is accurate, precise dosing. So alignment of the stopper with an external dose mark has inherent limitations. So you got to figure out how a human can do that. So it's just not, it's, you know, you're challenging the limits of human capability there. Also, for low, typically with pre-filled syringes, the accuracy of delivery is ensured by accuracy of filling, which is not the case for microliter volumes, right? You cannot say you filled accurately so you can deliver accurately. No, it's always going to be a metered dose. So either an alignment with a line or with some other way that I'll discuss later. Also, the third requirement is a lot of these drugs I mentioned is early in the clinical development cycle. You would need a non-prefilled option. Some treatments like cell therapies, I don't think can ever be prefilled. So you have to have a non-prefilled option as one of the requirements in whatever system you would use to deliver a microliter dose. Okay, so I'd like to introduce here our microliter dosing syringe. So what it does is it incorporates a standard prefillable syringe, whether prefilled or not, right? So that addresses it from my previous slide requirements 1 and 3 right there, right? So we use a standard prefillable syringe, so you minimize the risk of leachables or extractables that are undesirable, and then could also be used with, with a drug that it's vial stored. Then the other is this helps deliver an accurate, precise dose, overcoming limitations of human capability to deliver an accurate, precise microliter dose. Okay, so these are the 4 configurations. You could potentially have, it's either filled in a vial or pre-filled, and within each, you may want to allow the user flexibility to set the dose or not allow the user flexibility to set the dose. So that's how I get 4 configurations here. Okay, some data here. So we did some human factor study. We did up to 49 users. These are ophthalmologists. And I want to show here on the top panel there, there's various injection techniques, but irrespective of those techniques, we could deliver an accurate, precise 20 microliter dose using a 1 ml long prefilled syringe. On the bottom panel, as you can see, 0.5 ml prefilled syringe, 1 ml long prefilled syringe with an external dose mark, right? And the microliter dosing syringe with a 1 ml long. I think the performance is kind of self-explanatory, right? Also, you can see what I mentioned in my earlier slide about this sensitivity, the injection stroke. As you can see, once you go from a 0.5 ml, a smaller ID syringe, to a 1 ml long, which is a larger ID syringe, the inaccuracy and imprecision increases. In fact, with a 1 ml long, you could almost get 100% error in the dose. And this would be critical, especially in early in the clinical development, or before you launch commercially, where you have inherent problems with interpreting the data. Whether is it the drug or is it the delivery of the drug? You don't know. Another element of being able to deliver an accurate dose from a vial is, can you accurately draw from a vial? And this is data from with the microliter dosing syringe in a configuration where you can draw from a vial. And you can see here over the range that we've shown, we get very accurate drawing as well, which would be important to minimize overfill requirements. So minimizing overfill is important from a cost consideration, where you don't have to overfill because you have to account for waste and things like that. Viscous formulation. A lot of the formulations may be inherently viscous. So the microliter dosing syringe, actually, as it shows here, is a mechanical lever. So you have reduced apparent force that the user would feel, especially in applications in ophthalmology, where you're injecting and the injection technique is in a sensitive area. You want stability, and higher injection force and stability are inversely related. So we see here that we have, this is with the 329 centistoke, a liquid that we have very low injection force. What is the range? Now this is with a 1 ml long pre-filled syringe. You can see that we can deliver accurately and precisely as low as 5 microliters. That's the lowest application we've seen from in ophthalmology, but anything in between and above is possible as well. Another implication on the cost as it relates to accuracy and precision, right? So these are illustrative numbers for when you're looking at during drug development what the costs are. And our theory, if you combine the range that we've seen, so let's take for example a drug that is to be injected 50 microliters for a certain concentration. Now, for you to do dose sensitivity or dose sensitivity studies, you have to get different strengths. So typically that's done by reformulating the drug to get different strengths for microliters. So these costs are going to be duplicated for every drug solution, right? But with our system, you can take this one formulation and you can get different drugs strengths by different volumes because we have the accuracy to be able to do that. So you streamline some of the operation, your supply chain operation, with a big commercial, but more importantly during clinical development, to reduce the cost of your formulation, and what I've shown earlier, reduce costs in terms of reducing the overfill necessary. Okay, in summary, with the microliter dosing syringe, we offer a device-based approach that can extend the range of current standard prefillable syringe to as low, that typically deliver milliliters, we can now dose as low as 5 microliters, right? And we use standard, high-quality prefillable syringe materials. We don't provide the prefillable syringe, but you can supply it from any of the suppliers that currently provide them. There are also, by incorporating the standard prefilled syringe, all the benefits that standard prefillable syringes have, we offer that in a microliter dosing regime as well. And also, because with this device-based approach, it's kind of the path of least resistance to getting to a prefilled solution with the device-based approach. That's all I have. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for the nice talk. Do you have some questions to Gautam? I would like to ask a question related to to the death volume in your device. Yeah?
Yes.
Because that could be one of the cost drivers later on. Yeah, when we talk about a 0.5 ml syringe or 1 ml syringe, do you have data regarding that? Is it better to use a 0.5 ml syringe because you stop the injection and you have a really huge amount of residual volume in the syringe? And
Yes, so there is inherently this is the dead space in the syringe where you're unable to dose or deliver because the stopper cannot push out, especially in the lower cone, and if you have a configuration that's not a staked needle, there's some dead space in the lure of the needle as well. So that's where you lose some dead space. So that there's nothing that you can do to save on that piece. But the overfill, and this is kind of an extension of in a vial or in a syringe, is primarily because of allowing for manipulation and error in setting the dose and delivering the dose. So that's where you can save with our device. Yeah.
Thanks for clarification. Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Some additional questions?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. So there's one thing that I didn't really understand, and I apologize. Maybe I just missed it or didn't understand it properly. So you mentioned silicone oil droplets as an issue, but you also mentioned that your system uses standard 1 ml long prefillable syringes.
Yes.
Then, so how does that match? So how is your system solving then the issue of silicone oil droplets if a standard syringe can be used?
Sure. Thank you for the question, and I appreciate it's my job to clarify that. So there are silicone-free solutions that are possible in a 1 ml, standard 1 ml long configuration. So that would be one way if you want no silicone. But a baked-on silicone syringe is better than one of these hypodermic syringe where you have more leachable silicone. That would be a problem. So the baked-on is better. So right now the current pre-filled syringes use baked-on, and seems like that's been working better than the sprayed-on silicone. But if silicone is a problem, you can go to silicone-free as well. Yeah. Thank you for your question. Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Thank
Some
you.
additional questions? No? No? Okay, then.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, question. Appreciate
It's highly
it.
appreciated.
Thanks.
Thank you.